Hello and welcome to Unmasked, where we peek behind the scenes of the upcoming tabletop role-playing game Daemonologie. The game is a work in progress, so rules may change, but the stories will remain.
Hello, and welcome back to Daemonologie Unmasked, Episode 2. I am here today myself. I am Alex Wilcox. I use the pronouns he, they.
And I am Chavonne Brown, and I use the pronouns he, him.
Lovely. Last time, we had a little look at the general setting of Daemonologie. We had a little look at what the Inquisition is made up of, and a tiny look at the cosmology of the world. Then, how to make a character using the mechanics of the game. This time, however, we are going to be going deep into the lore of the demons and the demon's hand. All that good witchcraft stuff. And then we're going to have a little look at monsters. And we're going to chat to one of our illustrators for the project, Mo. So we'll chat to her later. And for now, let's just get a cracking.
Today, our lore is about the demon's hand. The demon's hand is what we call the witch. For a demon in hell requires a hand in the mundane world to act. But who do they serve? We touched on the cosmology of Daemonologie last time around. But when we drill down into it, hell is structured in 9 layers. Each of these layers is ruled by a king, but kings by themselves cannot rule hell. Beneath them we have princes, we have dukes, we have barons. Now, do not allow those words to make you think that all of these characters are men. They are not. Those are simply the words they use. I think you also imagine they probably have like a word in Enochian for these titles, but we just can't pronounce it.
Yeah, I've always imagined that demons just don't have any genders. They've no interest in that.
And for any of you fans of Christian theology, you will note that angels also have no junk.
Yeah, they're just smooth down there.
Like Barbie and Ken, except evil Barbie and Ken.
Barbie and Ken are angels.
That's our hottest take. And we were trying to figure out, well, why is it that demons are after the souls of humans? And we sort of, it's kind of a pyramid scheme of evil. Or a pyramid scheme, if you will. Just a pyramid scheme.
Yeah, they're already evil enough.
And what this pyramid scheme is the pact, essentially. What's the pact, Wilcox?
The pact itself, it gives them incredible power and access to all of the dark magic that the hells can offer. But it comes with a few caveats. Doom. The witch will slowly start to have their soul seep over to the hells.
And this is in no way as fun as having half your soul in the Fae.
No. It's like half your soul in the Fae, half your soul is, going to dances and having court parties. This is more like half of your soul is slowly being siphoned into demonic magic. And that's bad vibes. I don't like that. I don't like that feeling. I'm imagining that feeling. I don't like it. The pact also comes with transformation that may or may not have been bargained for. Depending on the powers that the hand is going to get, they're also going to be transformed to take on that form a little bit more. So going from all manner of monsters, they'll start to get on certain traits of them. So, for example, a hand that learns necromancy might be made completely spectral, or a hand that learns evocation and essential magic might start to spontaneously combust. Now, anybody can take a pact with the devil. And in fact, we both, when we run sessions, have very different styles of witches. So, Chavonne, what do you usually go for?
My style of Demon's Hand is wealthy capitalist bastards who already have all the power and just want more. These are your witches in Penny Dreadful. These are they already know the power that hell can give. They're very cognizant of it being a bad thing, but they also really want to either live forever or have all the money in the world.
Conversely, the hands that I usually create are those people who've been very much a victim of the temptation, and they're a little bit caught in over their head. They didn't anticipate that it was a pyramid scheme that they're joining, and now they're stuck with the lowest form of power underneath a crowned patron who very much wants to claim their soul, and they just wanted a way out of a bad situation in the first place. Or they're a bit of an idiot, and they didn't realize that signing away their soul was going to be so bad.
And whenever I play games that Alex is running, I generally feel quite bad for the witch when I find out their situation.
I remember very well one very bored wife of a noble who liked to spend time in a library and just read one of the wrong books, was found by one of the wrong demons.
And I thought it would be unfair to send her to prison.
I fully believe that she's going to read another one of those books.
What could I say but womp womp?
Waka waka. The pact itself has one core way of being undone. And this is what the Inquisition use itself. And they've developed a means of excommunicating someone from a pact and sometimes managing to undo these transformations. Now, this is the main way in which the hand's soul can be ensured that it's not going to go to hell and be used for demonic magic. It's a way in which the Inquisition can start to unseat all of that power, that soul magic that hell has. So generally, it's a good thing to do.
But sometimes the hand may not survive this.
Yeah, that's if your excommunication goes bad. So, you want to make sure you're pretty good at your excommunications. And then, once you've saved this person from eternal damnation, you take them to the Concilium, where they will treat this person who had the literal powers of hell in their body.
Now, the Demon's Hand is not inducted just by themselves. They may want to get something bigger done. Or it may be a group of people who have fallen into this temptation.
Yeah, Crown are going to give out as many pacts as they can generally do. So if they get to find dozens of people across the country who's going to take their pacts, I think they're going to say yes.
And these people can either form up into covens under a single patron or covens under a few demonic patrons. The bigger the coven, the more the witches can act, the more they can do in the nighttime, the more havoc they can wreak, the better they are at concealing themselves.
They also, they'll meet in a covenstead, which they'll be able to use to perform all of their dark magics, which, if you can find a covenstead and burn it to the ground, that's great. That's great. It's very difficult for these large conglomerations of witches to meet if they don't have the building in which they usually meet.
The covenstead is our nod to the idea of the Black Sabbath. We also have Black Sabbaths in the game, which witches may travel to.
The hands themselves, the powers that they exactly get, they're a few different things. As we've spoken about before, they get those transformations which make them much more powerful, but they also get ephemera objects, which they are able to craft. Now, the reason that these ephemera objects are unique to the hand is because to craft them, you need pacted blood. So they can only really be crafted by the demon's hands, and the Inquisitors won't really get their mitts on them. So these include different poultices, potions, poisons, and incredibly powerful artifacts.
do you have a favourite hand artifact?
My favourite is probably the dagger of the great beast.
Dear. Yeah.
I like the idea of holding and possessing a dagger that allows you to control the most powerful of monsters. That usually they just be like, nah, I'm not going to join with a witch. I'm my own power. But the dagger of the great beast, you make this, and then anything is going to be completely under your control.
I am a huge fan of the Black Diadem. It's very dramatic. It's very high camp. Here is a big fancy hat that once you wear it, you may cast the most powerful black magic spell imaginable right away.
Yeah, just make this artifact, and you don't need to prepare all that time with a spell. Just make this terrifying, monstrous artifact, and then don't bother with the rest of that spell. Oh, but it requires a child sacrifice. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. We will need the soul of a child for this.
Oh, no, don't worry about it.
Since I've mentioned huge black magic, the other way in which witches act, our second manner in which to wreak havoc, is through black magic. The demonic patrons themselves practice black magic, and the magics that they know, they teach to their witches through their pact. We have 5 schools of black magic. We have necromancy, we have curses, we have summoning, we have binding, we have evocation. Necromancy, of course, Wilcox, is...
That's the power over the dead and bringing them back to life so that they will serve you.
Curses, of course, are...
You're really putting me on the spot here now, Chavonne. Curses are things that you inflict onto other people and places. They're going to last a long time, and it's going to be a bad time.
Binding. I'll ask myself. Binding, Chavonne. What's that? Binding is magic done with the souls of other beings that allows you to take control of magical creatures, mundane creatures, and the minds of men.
I'll jump in with summoning, which is the power of bringing the hells to the mundane. So, this could be hiding your lair in a hellmouth, or it could be imbuing unnatural vitality to any monster or person. Just generally making them burst at the seams with hellfire. Of course.
We have both observed that demons are messy bitches who live for drama. Evocation is weather weaving. It is control over the natural world, but a very unnatural control over it. Unlike druids who have learned to work with the land and with the animals, evocation says, I'ma take all this shit, it's mine. And we'll redirect it into storms and into making your body into fire or water or the other elements. Turning the sky into death.
Yeah.
Things like this.
And of course, evocation has a whole bunch more spells than the others. Because it's all just control all of nature. And there's a lot of different ways in which you can do that. I like to think of the distinction between evocation and druidic magic as the druid is asking for it. They're saying like, "Hey, nature, do you want to help me out with this thing?" Whereas the witch is very much just, "Nah, I'm going to take this power now."
Yeah, the witch has lassoed nature with a fiery length of rope.
I'm going to shoot it back to you. Do you have a favorite spell?
Very good. One of my favorite spells is absolutely a binding spell.
Interesting.
And it made me think goodly of me. It's only a hex, but it's so creepy. It's so creepy. Think goodly of me. The hand takes control of a whole town's feelings, and people will just forget things they have seen. And if you accuse the witch, everyone will hate you.
Yeah, that's a good choice. Personally, I'm a big fan of, and it may just be the word, or the name of this. It's "May your crops wither and your bellies hunger," which is, of course, a curse. And it's in legacy to the idea in Irish folklore of hungry grass, where if you walk across the hungry grass, you will become hungry. So "May your crops wither and your bellies hunger" is a copy of an ancient unseelie curse. So the last thing that hands get a power over is monsters, which is what we're going to deep dive into the mechanics of. So we're going to talk and take apart the monsters.
we promised you monsters? Here are some monsters. There are 6 different schools of monsters. That's right, I only said 5 kinds of black magic, but there are 6 kinds of monsters. You've been deceived. What's the 6th kind, Wilcox?
The 6th kind are the Unseelie, the evil Fey creatures who are generally out to cause mischief, chaos, and don't have too much of a healthy relationship with humanity.
But conversely, they also don't like demons.
They just don't like anyone, really, do they? I can't think of a single thing that the Unseelie actually like.
Apart from each other, and maybe not even each other most of the time.
Yeah, no, I feel that's true as well.
They're belligerent.
The Unseelie are going to pop up, and maybe you'll be able to manipulate them into fighting the hand rather than fighting you yourself. But generally, they're going to be causing chaos and more problems. So we've included them as an extra school of monsters in there. But the other 5 are tied to the schools of black magic that we have just been discussing. So, Chavonne, what is the first?
The first, tied to necromancy, are the undead. These are creatures risen up from the grave to wreak havoc. Mostly, they are enthralled by the hand. There are a few, as there are in every school, legendary monsters who generally cannot be enthralled. But the undead generally are your skeletons, they're your revenants, they're your ghouls, they're your conglomeration of corpses smashed together into a giant...
As is common.
What's the next school, Wilcox?
The next school are the cursed. These are creatures that have been subjected, usually humans, who have been subjected to a powerful curse which has transformed them and their mind. So you find in this school some of the more common folkloric features of werewolves and vampires, but you also get some more unique ones. The Owlman.
The Woodwurser, who they are hairy forest people. The Woodwurser might be English Sasquatch.
Oh, yeah. That's who they are. They're also, like, outside of the curse. Woodwurser, they're generally just, like, good folk who live in the woods. Give themselves to the Green Man.
Following on after curses, we have binding. Binding, as I've said, is magic to do with the soul, and so things that have been subjected to soul binding are the bound. These are magical and mundane creatures who have had their minds manipulated to serve the hand. On the mundane side, we have badgers, wolves.
Oh, yeah.
And on the magical side, we have things that you may recognise, such as Chimera and Grindylows. We also have stranger-bound creatures, like the lion boar, which is precisely what it sounds like.
Now, the next coming on from that is the Called. These are created or brought about from summoning magic. They are the Hellions, the denizens of hell, and the demons. So you're going to find your weakest demons in there of imps and your hellhounds, and then going further on to your Malphites, and then all the way up to the most terrifying Daughters of Lilith.
The Daughters of Lilith really lean on that biblical angel. So what's it like? Has 4 horns and its eyes are made of fire. Oh,
yes, that sounds like hell.
Moving on from the Called, we have the Essential. The Essential are creatures that are embodiments of primal forces. So you have embodiments of the earth, gnomes, you have embodiments of light in wisps, you have embodiments of air in sylphs, you have water in, I think, the very terrifying bog stalker, an amorphous creature made from vines that drags people to their death. We have a bugbear or a boggart, which is just darkness formed into a consciousness. And these are the things towards the weaker end of the essential scale.
Yeah, you start to get further on into the giants of Norse mythology, as well as the dragons of spanning the globe. Generally speaking, the essential and the bound would not be evil. They would not be monsters that you would go around and start hunting and killing. In fact, the Essential are only there because they've been enraged and possessed by the Hand. Undead generally aren't going to come about into the natural world through usual means, but there are a few that come about in normal cases, such as ghosts with unfinished business or revenants with the same problem. And the cursed are simply generally not going to come about from any source other than witchcraft. And the called, the demons, they're not usually going to be residents of the mundane planes, which leaves space for sometimes you to encounter monsters that are not under the thrall of a hand. And potentially, if you make the right sort of choices, they might become your allies, and they might start working to help the areas that you're with. And so today, we're going to cover 3.
Today's 3 are gnomes, neophyte vampires, and the Hogbui. Gnomes are essential, neophytes are cursed, and the Hogbui is undead. But what are these creatures?
Now, each monster in the game comes with a tiny bit of lore text, which gives you a bit of an idea about who they are and what's going on with them. So we're just going to read these out. And first is the gnome, a spirit of earth, no taller than a foot, adorned in peasant garb with a pointy red cap. They run fast, thief aplenty, and live underground. Gnomes are friends to small animals, caring for their wounded, and are master gem cutters.
Neophyte vampire, the youngest of the vampires, newly reborn with up to 100 years of half-life. The neophyte appears almost human, with sharpened teeth and nails, and skin pale and papery. Their blood is too weak to make thralls, let alone new vampires, but this does not stop them from trying.
And the Hogbui, sometimes known as a Draugr or Barrow-wight. This is a spirit tied back to their entombed and decaying body. The Hogbui's true form is a swollen, blackened walking corpse with white shining eyes. While they may shapeshift, they can never mask their eyes or their stench. These are the 3 that we're going to be working with, and we're going to talk about what makes them up together.
So with this regular Chuckle Club, they have what we call acts hysterical. In the game, hysteria is a measure of how panicked a region is feeling. And the presence of monsters will contribute to a rise in hysteria. How do they do this? With their acts hysterical. These things happen at night. So, examples of acts hysterical from each of these monsters, these things that they do at night that make the region a little bit uncomfortable.
The gnomes can go about pilfering. They perform a small raid, stealing items and hoarding them. A hand can direct a monster to conduct an act hysterical, and so in this case, a gnome conducting a pilfer means that they'll collect materials or spirit and steal something away.
Now, the vampires act hysterical. As you heard in their lore box, they cannot make thralls and they cannot make vampires, but they will still try. And their act hysterical of young blood can, like with pilfer, be compelled. They will try and enthrall someone by drinking them almost to death and giving them their blood, or that person will simply die because the vampire's blood is not strong enough to make a new vampire yet.
And finally, the Hogbui's, the Draugr's curse. A settlement nearby their lair is cursed. Any that die are risen as Draugrs that essentially appear as skeletons, and they are enthralled to the monster. They may have as many curses on nearby settlements, and these can essentially start to create a whole army of the undead if not dealt with in time.
Which is bad.
That is actually quite bad. Now, just because they've got these acts hysterical, it doesn't mean that they generally sit around like a lemon for the rest of the time. They are going to be doing bad stuff and sort of making the realm a bit more dangerous. So anything that might come near their lair might end up being attacked or wounded or even killed and taken in, which might start causing disappearances, which in turn will raise hysteria, and hysteria will just start to compound from there. So your best course of action is to deal with the monsters in short time before they start making everybody quite panicked. Now, this leads into the core stats that the monsters have. Now, each has 4 that sit along the top that start to tell you a little bit about them. Firstly, they've got their primacy and their number.
Now, a primacy describes basically how powerful that monster is, and the Demon's Hand has a certain primacy score. This describes how many monsters they can control. The primacy of a gnome is 1. Let's say a witch has 3 primacy. Gnomes come about in groups of 6. So a witch, if they had 3 primacy and was feeling extraordinarily silly, might be going around with 18 gnomes. They might, if they so chose to do this.
That would be A, a sight, but B, actually quite a terrifying thing to do.
The neophyte vampire has a primacy of 2 because the neophyte, whilst being a vampire, is a sucker. And that was a pun. Yes.
Oh, I'm so glad.
The neophyte is still a vampire that could beat you up, but it's also, once you get to a certain level, becomes a punk.
So you could theoretically have a neophyte and a group of gnomes.
If you have primacy 3, yes, you could have a group of gnomes and a neophyte vampire, which we haven't yet seen. The Hogwee has a primacy of 4. Now, this is the highest primacy that we have in the game. Beyond this, you get legendary creatures who generally need to have other ways of encouraging them to work with a witch.
Yeah, we talked earlier about the artifact that allows you to enthrall legendary monsters, but generally legendary monsters are going to be their own agents in the world. Maybe working with the hand, but similarly to the Unseelie, they'll be able to be convinced to not be working with the hand. Their next 2 stats are attack and strength. Their attack indicates how many actions they'll be able to take each round in a fight, and their strength indicates how powerful they are before they can be beaten down. So gnomes, for example, have 2 attack and 1 strength. Neophytes have 3 attack but 12 strength, and Hogwee have 5 attack and 25 strength. So a Hogwee will be able to take 5 different actions in a turn, and be able to take 25 damage. They're pretty damn powerful. But a neophyte, for example, will only be able to take 12 damage and only take 3 actions.
And the gnome can take 2 actions, and the gnome has 1 strength because it's a gnome.
Yeah, throw one out the window and it's
pretty much
over
done with for the gnome there.
Yeah, it's pretty much over. So, in a confrontation, which is the fighting that you'll get into, in a confrontation, it works in rounds. Firstly, the players will go, the guests, and then the monsters will go. Or, if the monsters have surprised the players, the monsters will get to act first. Now, each turn, the monsters will get to use a number of actions equal to their attack. So this includes moving, this includes dealing damage, this includes using something that we'll get to, which is axe combative. Each monster has access to a set of universal actions, which include, as I said, moving and attacking, but also things like accosting people, grabbing them, throwing them, pushing them, and doing all that good stuff.
They may also use their attack to buy acts combative. So, for instance, the Hogwee has an attack of 5. It could use 3 of those attack points to shapeshift, or 3 of them to engage in what is called Sundering Vigor, where with the Hogwee's weapon, or simply their enormous strength, crush the bones of an enemy with a strike, which would inflict damage, cause severe injury, and because you've just been sundered.
Yeah, I really don't want to be sundered. That doesn't sound fun.
Conversely, the gnomes act combative. They have 2 attack. Now, gnomes, as they come in a little mob of 6, can combine their attack in order to do things.
So their act combative is Brobdingnag, named after the giant in Gulliver's Travels, where 2 of them jump onto an opponent, bringing them down and tying them up with little ropes and pickaxes. Their The target will then have to start to try and escape with just a brawn test.
The neophyte vampire, as I said, being the punk vampire, they have 3 attacks, so they could choose to spend 2 of those attack points doing their short-lived feast, which is where if they've grabbed you within a cost, they can drink from you, dealing some damage and healing themselves, or they can do beaten wings and transform into a bat and maneuver faster. Now, the neophyte vampire being the punk vampire, as you go up the vampire scale of age, the things that the vampires do become much, much worse, and they look much less human.
Yeah. So I think of now I only know Dracula in the Castlevania sense from Smash Bros, but I do think of second form Dracula, who's just a big beefy bat. There's potentially an inclination that when you come across a monster, you just want to fight them and you just want to defeat them. But that's not always the way you want to go.
Some monsters may simply be much too strong to come out with a full frontal attack at. For instance, the Hogbui.
Instead, in those cases, you'll want to be aware of their weaknesses and their resistances. So some monsters will have a vast array of resistances that make them completely invulnerable to any sorts of damage that you might be able to do with them with mundane weapons. So you're going to need to start thinking about the ways in which you can get around this. So for example, a Hogbui is immune to any dark magic and any form of damage from the cold. They're also resistant to any iron weapons. And they are revived unless returned to their resting place, and enraged if you enter their resting place. So they are generally, all round, a bit of a nuisance. However, you can start to do a lot more damage to them if you take into account their weaknesses. So they are vulnerable to face steel, they're vulnerable to silver, and they're vulnerable to fire. So all of that will deal extra damage, and they are killed if they are returned to their original resting place. So there's a possibility that you'll be able to deal with a Hogbui without any problem occurring.
Whilst the neophyte vampire, their resistances, they will be revived unless you dismember and burn them. And even though they are a cursed creature, the curse they bear is the mark of Cain. You cannot counterspell the curse that is in their blood. Other curses can be counterspelled, but not this one.
A neophyte has also been around for around 100 years at this point. If they're counterspelled, they will also just die.
Yeah, they are.
You can't turn back to a human form after, a century of life.
They just die. And again, being very new to this, they are weak to a lot of stuff. They are vulnerable to holy water, to fire, to sunlight. They can't cross running water for some reason.
Just think of all those things that vampires are usually weak to, or weak to in the most extreme cases. They're weak to that.
As they get older, they start to lose some of these weaknesses, but they're really vulnerable to stuff.
And then finally you come across gnomes. Now gnomes are in the case of something that isn't evil. Like, gnomes aren't bad. They're just spirits of Earth itself. So you might want to start thinking about counterspelling a gnome. Because if you can release them from the thraldom of a demon's hand, then they might start to work on your side. Now, their weaknesses are they're lured by gems and jewelry. They just like to have them. And they are banished if their hat is stolen. And they are terrified by dogs. They are resistant, however, completely immune to iron. So most of the weapons that you're going to have to fight a gnome, they're not going to work.
You're just going to want to sort of either throw gnomes or take their hats.
So these are the ways in which you can start to combat and counter the monsters that you'd come across. Now, counterspelling them is usually the best way of releasing them from that thraldom, and this way you can start to find them working on your side, but you'll need to defeat them and make sure that they're not going to just attack you back.
I think this has been a pretty comprehensive deep dive into gnomes, neophytes, and the Hogbui, and hopefully has given you a better understanding of how monsters function in Daemonologie. We're going to be coming back in a little bit to chat to Mo, one of our illustrators, who is working on the monsters.
Hello, this is Alex just popping in after the fact to say that this next conversation has spoilers for episode 4 of the actual play. So if you want to avoid that, then have a listen to that first, which will come out on Tuesday of next week.
We are here with one of our fabulous illustrators. So we are here with Mo. Mo, do you want to introduce yourself?
Aw. Hi, I'm Mo. I am an illustrator. I guess I can call myself that now. What to say about myself? I'm based in London. I'm a recent art school grad. Graduated in 2020 into this wonderful, wonderful state of the world. So jobs are pretty non-existent, but luckily I've kind of been swinging from like trying to do freelance and like the odd commission, but we're trying.
Yeah, we're all pretty much in that situation now, right?
Yeah.
Chavonne's PhD student, and so sort of in that constant state of how do you get a job alongside this?
I've done some commissioned work this year. I think technically in the year 2020, I have earned through an actual check like £2,000. It's been garbage.
But you can live off that, right? That's a year's salary, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Me deciding to
I feel like we're all in that.
Do a card, like a Christmas card, for like 20 quid, thinking that that's gonna be okay. Or I did doing like a cartoony version of like a photo for like a last minute Christmas present, and I was like, oh, if it's just kind of one person and like a pet, then yeah, 20-30 quid, that's fine. But someone then sent me the picture and it had 8 people in it, and I'd already said 20 quid, and I was like, oh no, we made some mistakes.
That is thoroughly upsetting.
Yeah, it's okay. We learn.
Yeah. So, what exactly are you doing on the project itself?
I am illustrating the monsters in the Monster Almanac, I guess. Doing a bunch of little illustrations, or like doing all the creepy boys.
So you've already put together a lich and a chimera. The lich is looking terrifying.
Yay!
Absolutely. Like horrible.
I'm so glad.
In the right way. It's always weird to describe it because it's like, this is horrible. I hate it. It's disgusting. It's a bodily reaction. Like in my gut, I'm afraid. It's great. It's exactly what we want.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad, honestly. That's what I want my art to instill in people. Pure fear and disgust.
It's that classical, thank you, I hate this.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, I hate
it. So we've played a few games together now. Who do you play when we're running a game?
I play Eli Sawthorne, a reformed rogue, who probably is the least roguelike rogue, but it's fine. He is kind of short, baby-faced, kind of in his 20s. Learnt all of his medical knowledge from his family, who all come from medical kind of doctorate backgrounds. And then through perhaps getting in with the wrong crowd, some dodgy decisions, a dark past maybe, ended up doing his Inquisition work.
I feel like we're just starting to learn about Eli's dark past.
It's a work in progress.
I'm really thrilled. I'm really thrilled to see how Eli's agent Wallace Blick plays into it.
Oh yeah, Wallace Blick has become infamous for failing everything.
Also, for those who may be listening to us play the game in our actual play podcast, you may recognise Eli as Eli Swolethorn.
It's the new nickname he's adopted. I love it.
We all realise that Eli has the highest fitness that you can have in the game, and is incredibly dexterous, so must have the body of a gymnast.
Clearly.
Like an Olympic-level gymnast.
He's a short swole king, and I can confirm that.
And everyone who meets him who is older than 30 calls him little boy, and that's just...
I feel like part of that is intimidation.
Yeah.
Eli is yet to meet very many monsters, but we did see the other day Eli met some gnomes. How both like on and off camera have you found meeting the monsters that you are going to be illustrating or otherwise?
I mean, firstly, like just reading through the list of monsters, there's so many, which is so cool. There's a lot of kind of names that you'd think you'd recognize, but when you read into it, it's not quite what you expect. Like they're slightly a different take, I feel, or there's a couple of monsters that you kind of don't see as commonly, which is really exciting. Some of them are mad. I can't remember quite the name of it, but one of them was described as like a dream squid, which I'm so excited to try and draw.
The Ephialtes, yes.
The
Ephialtes. The Dream Kraken.
The Dream Kraken!
Umbra Odium. Yeah.
I guess
that was literally us sitting like, well, we don't have a kraken. We need something big and dreamy. Yeah, let's have a dream kraken.
You've got that.
You've
got like the lich or the vampire or the kind of werewolf-esque creatures and dragons, but then you've got on the other hand all the much more bizarre ones like the dream squid, which is just so good. I think you covered all areas.
So, have you? Do you have a favorite monster, sort of like from the list, or any that you've encountered, or is it that dream squid, or?
I mean, sadly, I haven't met the dream squid in gameplay yet, but
that's true.
When that happens, very excited.
When that, I don't know if that's excitement. I feel that's a runaway.
I mean, I wasn't super aware of the gnomes before I encountered them in the last gameplay, and they have really stolen my heart.
I kept thinking. I messaged Chavonne afterwards that I was hoping that you would try to throw a gnome out the window, and B, then the gnomes would topple you and dangle you out the window.
Oh,
I was
God.
really hoping that those two things would occur, but no.
That would have been so good.
Eli was too sneaky for that.
I mean, I did contemplate just, scooping one up and seeing what would happen, but maybe that was good that I didn't.
Sidebar, talking of running away from monsters is absolutely a thing you're allowed to do in Daemonologie. If you think, nah, you can just run away.
That's the coward's way out.
The gnomes are quite literally the weakest essential monster. They are, they have the lowest stats, but there are a lot of them. And I was genuinely thinking, if Eli goes in that room, Eli could die.
Oh, God.
These gnomes could potentially kill Eli.
Eli could be whomped to death by a pack of gnomes, which would be ridiculous.
Could you imagine?
It's true
If
that
that was
the
the way he
gnomes
died.
probably wouldn't.
That would be so tragic. To be, how did Eli die? Oh, this amazing battle. No, just swarmed by gnomes. It'd truly be tragic.
It's, you don't... I mean, imagine 6 1-foot-tall gem cutters. They've got little pickaxes. Like, if a human being were to go into a room full of 6 of them, it's not good.
You wouldn't leave alive.
He'd at least be maimed.
Yeah.
Badly.
Have you had a favourite moment of play in general? And this can be from, the campaign that we've had on air or behind the scenes.
I mean, I think one moment that really sticks with me in terms of kind of Eli's character, I really enjoyed. I think one of the first kind of fights we had was with a pack of wolves. And that was like when I first got to kind of get Eli to try fighting something and like see what he could do. And it turned out so well. It was essentially most of the characters were running away or being injured or maimed in the background. But Eli was able to run at a wolf with his hunting knife and essentially kind of throw the wolf off of him. It was quite an amazing moment. I was quite proud.
Yeah, I seem to distinctly remember when that was playing. We had two other people there of Chavonne's character, Saint-Jean d'Anadu, a lace merchant. And quite simply, when I say a lace merchant, you can imagine how Saint-Jean was not able to fight a wolf. But also, aside from Saint-Jean, we had Professor Bernard del Toro, whose backstory is that he hunts vampires on mainland Europe. And he was also not doing very well at all against the wolves. And then Eli, just dashes in, hunting knife ready, just like leaps on one. Incredible.
So fun. There was definitely some healing that was...
Didn't Eli catch a wolf mid-air?
Yeah. Yeah, it was leaping at... The wolf was leaping at Eli. And then...
Oh, so good. I could see it in my head.
Yeah,
my God, this is so fun.
Because up until that moment as well, Eli had been like, "Oh, I'm quite new. I'm probably a bit nervous.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how well I fit in, or all these other people. They're so much more experienced than I am." And then that wolf fight happens. Eli absolutely butchers the wolves, while Saint-Jean and Bernard are just running around.
I remember distinctly falling over. I remember distinctly Saint-Jean falling over.
I do remember the word mauled being used.
Yes. My Saint-Jean's arm was mauled as he fell over.
Saint-Jean. He did make it through though. He recovered.
Yeah, it was it was a lucky instance that Eli was there.
I mean, that must have been my second session, first or second.
It was the second?
Second, yeah.
Yeah, either second or... Yeah.
Because Saint-Jean only arrived on the second.
Even by, like, only knowing the game for one session previously, it kind of was really nice to kind of really early on kind of get it and get really into it, and I was able to kind of, like, see the world and understand the characters a lot better. It was very... like inviting and imaginative, and it didn't take me long at all to kind of really get stuck into it, which was really good.
Have you played any RPGs before for Daemonologie?
No. I mean, I had basic knowledge of like D&D. I mean, very basic. Like tried to play when we were younger, but never really did a whole lot. And listened to some previous podcasts. But other than that, like I'd never actually played anything. So I've always wanted to. So this has been so cool to be a part of. But yeah, no, I thought it was fantastic. Like it immediately made sense to me.
Well, yeah, that's good to hear. It's definitely been nice to chat about it as well, and get to know a bit more about Eli Swalthorn. Yeah, absolutely.
Short King. Short King.
Short King.
I think potentially what I want to ask is sort of like a leaving note, or sort of like question.
Mm-hmm.
What are there any monsters you're really excited to illustrate? And if that is gnomes, that's absolutely fine.
I mean, absolutely, the gnomes have moved to the top of the list, but there was. I mean, I've done some sketches for Daughter of Lilith, which is really cool, and I'm also weirdly excited about drawing a Dullahan.
Oh, very cool.
We swing around to Sleepy Hollow again.
Yeah, Chavonne and I earlier were talking about how it's shameful that neither of us watched Sleepy Hollow recently.
Yeah.
And that's our own fault. And so now that you mentioned the Dullahan, I think it's more emphasized that we just need to Just need to all go away and watch Sleepy Hollow.
See it looking very dramatic and dark, and a lot of movement, and I'm very excited.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell that we are too.
For those unfamiliar with the Dullahan or the Gencrane, it is the Headless Horseman. Except the Headless Horseman in Irish mythology is not a normal fairy. It is essentially a fairy demon.
Mm.
Oh no!
What a perfect combo.
Yeah, perfect for this game. Absolutely.
What more could you expect?
And rather like all the demons I spoke of, it is a messy bitch who lives for drama, because why carry around your own head if you want a messy bitch who lives for drama?
Yeah, they could just not do that. They could put their head down somewhere.
Yeah, they choose to do that.
Just
What
duct
is the
tape it back
advantage of
on.
carrying around a head, really? Just, you know, you'd have an extra hand free.
Yeah. Anyway, this has been lovely to chat through. I think we've had a nice little conversation here. So, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for telling us a bit more about the monsters and the process behind making them come to life. And yeah, be back on the actual play in no time at all. So,
And honestly, I've been enjoying this process so much. Like, it really is. Kind of the dream project.
that is, well, I mean, it is for Chavonne and I as well.
Yeah.
Certainly. So it's very nice to hear that it's the same for you. Right. Well, thank you very much, and
Thank
we'll
you,
see
man.
you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. This has been Daemonologie Unmasked episode 2. We have covered pacts, hands, demons, and monsters. We have heard from our wonderful monster artist Mo. Not that they are a monster, that they are drawing monsters. Mo is lovely, as you heard.
Far from monstrous, but monstrous imagination.
Quite terrifying.
Quite terrifying. Well, I mean, we can barely talk.
If you would like to connect with us further, you can find us at Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and Instagram at Daemonologie RPG. That's Daemonologie with a D-A-E and the end of ology with an I-E, not a Y. The RPG, all uppercase. You can also email us. What's the email, Wilcox?
I think it's Daemonologie RPG.
Yes, it is.
gmail.com.
Yes,
At
it is.
gmail.com.
Very good. I have been Chavonne,
I've been Alex.
and this has been Daemonologie Unmasked.
Oh, thank you for listening. See you next time.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Was it that bad?
Did you dab first? It looked like you dabbed.
Oh no. They don't need to know that.
I was like, Mo's out of here styling it.
It wasn't intentional.